God.
Hello.
Hello. Haven't seen you in a long time.
We were just speaking just before this. My name is Gaia3. I use they and she pronouns. I'm a writer and a sex ed facilitator.
My name is Sarubia. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm an educator, in primary schools. I teach yoga and just started sex ed facilitation too, thanks to Gayatri, and writing as well. Very fetal, but loving it.
And lots of lovely movement work with your writing as well.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I forgot. I'm also a dancer. Yeah. Movement. I mean, just, it's so weird. We have these labels about what we are, right? But we kind of do, a lot of us do all of these things. We just don't say we are that. Even though you are what you're doing, I suppose, in that moment.
Yeah. And I think like dipping out of different creativities feels really nourishing, and like there's not just one pathway to like feel out your creativity, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like, why, like, I feel like it's like one giant path almost. It's crazy. I think maybe that's why I feel like I'm always doing like 5 things in tandem, but it's all nourishing. I suppose most people specialize, or not, I don't know about most people, but I guess whoever we're exposed to or the society we live in tells you need to specialize. But we're made up of mind, body, soul. And like, you know, that's so free. And so, yeah, I guess the restrictions are a bit like, you're a writer, you're a dancer, you're a teacher, you're an activist. And yeah, I think embracing all of that, which I feel like we had as a children, but re-embracing it now is, yeah, it's a journey, I think.
And all those paths can really sustain each other and inform each other, to make like each practice as sort of compelling as it can be.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's like the workshop that we facilitated for inclusive Tamil arts, with the visualizing, writing, and then expressing it through your body. Yeah, and it's so funny to just like talk all about this, but you know, pre-lockdown would just kind of go to the club and dance and be like, and just, you know, and then journal and just like not think nothing of it as like different art forms, but kind of understanding how it's all linked now. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think for me, like a lightness that has come out of being in a sort of like solitary queer bubble in my home, is being really selective about the company that I have around me, whether that's like who I'm reading, and we'll get onto our authors in a minute, who I'm reading, or like you said, like us dancing on Zoom together, and whether it's, you know, trying to find a queer Tamil diasporic community, like being really selective, rather than sort of being bombarded in the outside world with so much, you know, like chat, and sometimes it can be quite harmful. Just being like outside of that like self-made queer cocoon. And I think for me, like that intentional easing out of my home is difficult. So yeah, what does like that look like for us? I think that's a really good question to ask. Like, what does intentionally easing look like or feel like?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. When you said what you said about your queer cocoon, it just sent me into a flashback into when I was like 7 years old. And I guess the outside world was like my family. but they were all really loud and, you know, just too much for me. And I really needed my own cocoon. So I would carve out a little fork like between the sofas and like
Oh,
drape it. And I'd have my books actually, which are like my baby books, but have my books and my crayons and things that I need just to kind of, you know, feel I guess isolate myself in a sort of like self-care way. And I found that that's what I've done this lockdown too. Like I've got my books and art supplies and yoga mat and just, yeah, it's interesting how actually the pandemic, yeah, no, it's been horrendous, but and life-changing and bittersweet. And I guess the sweetness comes from being able to be in our cocoon and tune into kind of the inner voice, because like you said, like when we're in the world, the lots of external voices kind of shape our reality, but we get to shape our reality from the inside through being in our cocoon.
yeah.
And linked to authors, but I'm not going to go into it, reading Adrienne Maree Brown
Yeah.
and thinking about community. I feel like going back into the world, you know, for the community aspect is quite important, but how do we do that while retaining like our boundaries, I suppose, which we've built to kind of become a butterfly within our cocoon, I suppose.
Yeah.
And how do we keep that for ourselves, but also share and be in community in a way that everyone can have that for themselves?
Right, yes. So almost like, how do we sustain a community where we're growing and shaping each other and learning each other's boundaries, but also maintaining our capacity for self-love and self-care? Yeah. Because you mentioned Adrienne, I was listening to a podcast they were on, and they talked about boundaries as the way or the space in which I love myself and others simultaneously. And how can we do both without sacrificing one? I think that's something I never thought about before 2020, you know, and I think a lot of Tamil communities, and I'll just speak to what I know, you know, because of kind of past kind of genocide is in our history, you know, and surviving in the diaspora has been difficult. Trying to carve out homes in a place that is not Sri Lanka, not the island, has meant that my family, you know, our families have had to sacrifice a lot. My family wouldn't talk about boundaries or, you know, self-care, because actually they were just trying to survive. And now I think, do you feel like in our Tamil communities, we're starting to talk about boundaries? And I will talk about that with my parents, my elders. And I think it's really useful for all of us in our network to be really open about and say, I don't have energy for that today, but I will do in 3 days' time once I've recovered, you know, that kind of thing.
100%. It's been the same experience for my family, and I think it is safe to say it's quite common in our community that with the coming from, you know, country of conflict and fleeing that and having that intergenerational trauma sort of weaved into the inequalities that you face once you get to this country as well by the system. All of that, it has put pressure, I guess, on the first generation to survive and not even think about self-care as just secondary. It's almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, you know, they're still like on the bottom one, like feeding, like food, a roof over your head, that and not, yeah. And it's interesting because I actually, that guilt sat with me for a while, like going through uni and even, you know, to my mid-20s, thinking like, okay, my parents have struggled so hard to get us here and for us to be alive, because a lot of our people have died in, you know, being killed by a genocidal government. And the fact, you know, that I'm here and then just like changing my dream every day, I'm just like, what? How do I have this luxury? But
that's what they survived for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, and it's interesting because, yeah, I know I was about to go in a complete other tangent, but I'm like, no, stay streamlined, but keep that tangent in mind. But yeah, I think boundaries, I know within my own family, because in order to survive, it's like people sacrificing their own time to help their family. Like if we look at our mothers, even our fathers, and then even siblings, it's it's a bit too luxurious. Like you don't even consider, actually, no, this time is for me. When you're like a child, I felt like that wasn't even an option. I just sort of self-sacrifice is love. You know, that's kind of almost what I've learned, and then changing that now. And talking about boundaries with my siblings, actually, because I feel like, yeah, my mum is no longer here, so she passed away, but with my father, I think my boundaries are okay. I think we've got that relationship and we've got that understanding, but with my sisters, yeah, to whom I feel I'm really trying to, you know, I've sacrificed a lot in terms of not really thinking of myself, and then just going in and helping, and then getting drained, and then getting resentful, and then not even like, and then I don't even like that, and then that's not even nice, and then the quality of the help you're giving isn't as nice if it comes from that kind of place.
Yeah, I totally hear that.
Yeah, and I'm changing that now, which I love, and I feel like, and my sisters I actually was surprised by how open and how like receiving they are to, oh yeah, obviously you need time for yourself. And like, you know, actually I just had to communicate, and I think communication is like that bridge, you know, I mean, you know, that we never had as children. I don't know if it was to do with the intergenerational trauma, the added trauma of being like racialized in this country and being immigrants, but communication just was really difficult and was the source of many hardships, which could have been easily overcome by communicating feelings and being open. And I think that's what's changed now a lot, and helped with the boundary setting for this flourishing of yourself and the people that you love. So I think communication and language is something which I know you've been working on with Sabda, which is amazing.
Yeah, having words in the Tamil language to talk about consent and sexual health and boundaries, is amazing. And now I can have whole conversations with my elders saying, but these are my feelings, and my feelings are really important in Tamil, right? And the manasakulla enna irukku nan ungalku solla venum, you know, kind of saying like, my feelings aren't just, you know, like airy kind of unimportant luxuries, you know, like I think it's necessary to,
it's your life.
Yeah. And I think letting people surprise you is important. Like I wasn't sure how my elders would take it, right? When I said, I'm going to turn my phone off for a whole 5 days, or I'm going to delete WhatsApp for a month, you know, because I'm just finding that these things are really draining. And they were like, yeah, cool, fine. Which I didn't expect. Actually, WhatsApp, life-changing. Go on.
Yeah. Oh my God. I totally want to do that, you know, but I feel like because of some of my commitments, which I love, like my charity and volunteer work, like it's just necessary to be on it for the. But I think actually having like hours on which, okay, these are the hours that I check it, even if you can't delete it completely, could be
Yeah,
have a massive impact. Like I don't,
definitely.
yeah, and not having the notification switched on either, so you don't know when someone has messaged you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really good. Like, takes work to ingrain that discipline in your mind, but yeah,